Healing with crystals is an ancient practice. Yet did you know that the essence of gemstones can be used in homeopathy? Spiritual awakening, self-awareness, and intuition are some of the gifts that gemstone remedies can bring to your life. Homeopath, teacher, and author Giovanna will show you a different perspective on the healing properties of these magical gemstones. Join us in Gemstones and Crystals in Homeopathy and discover the power of gemstone remedies.
Hi, welcome to Gemstones and Crystals in Homeopathy. I'm your host, Giovanna Franklin, and as you have probably seen from the title, we're going to talk about Shungite today. So why are we talking about Shungite? In the last 2 or 3 weeks, I have received a few inquiries about either Shungite, just straight questions about Shungite, how to use it, or other inquiries about how do I defend myself from electromagnetic frequency. Is there anything in homeopathy that I can use, or anything in terms of gemstones and crystals? And then just recently I found myself using homeopathic Shungite for personal reasons. And so I thought it was really time to talk about Shungite. So first of all, what is Shungite? I'll show you what it looks like if you are just listening to this. So this is my Shungite. It's black. It's completely black. It has a kind of shine on it, and actually it used to have more of a shine on it. I've had this piece of Shungite for a few years now, and I put it in my water jug. So it usually sits at the bottom of my water jug, and I use that to purify my water. And more of this later. I will explain how it works. So just before starting, a few minutes ago, I was asked, why is Shungite why do I call it the ultimate protective stone against electromagnetic frequencies and radiations? There are other stones that people maybe know more, that are more commonly used for this purpose, like black tourmaline or black obsidian. So this is a very good question. And first of all, I would like to say that all the stones and crystals that are black are traditionally used as protection in general. And it can be protections in terms of negative energy, protection in terms of radiation, anything that is negative, that can affect us negatively. Black stones in general, you will find, have been used over time, over the centuries, as a protective or grounding stone, things that bring us to ourselves, back into ourselves. So for example, black obsidian is one of them. And actually, I've got this wand of black obsidian, which is beautiful, it's shiny, it's black. So just as a comparison, what's the difference between black obsidian and Shungite? Black obsidian is easily recognizable because it's very light. It may be a big chunk of obsidian, but it's actually quite light, whereas Shungite is heavier. It's kind of more tightly packed. The molecular structure is more tightly knitted together compared to obsidian. But obsidian is also a very good remedy as well. It's also a homeopathic remedy, and it is used as grounding stone, a grounding crystal. And also another thing, that black stones and crystals usually deal with all the chakras. So you have different crystals, different stones that have an affinity with a specific chakra and association with a specific chakra, also due to the color, because you know that chakras also are associated with different colors, whereas black stones and black crystals, you will find, are usually associated, they can rebalance the whole chakra system. And that's true for shungite as well. There are other black stones, something that I wear, for example, which is a piece of tektite. So in general, you're not wrong if you are using a different type of stone or crystal for protection in terms of EMF or general energy protection. So what's so special about shungite? So I wanted to talk about shungite because shungite is very specific, has a very specific property of protection for electromagnetic fields. And also because in the case of shungite, as we will see, there have been scientific studies conducted. And so we almost have we have the scientific proof that this stone has indeed some properties that are very useful for us, which is not, it's quite rare as a homeopath, or if you're a crystal healer, or if you are using crystals. Usually it's easy to dismiss all the claims, all the properties. Yes, it's just tradition. Yes, it's folk's tale. Yes, it's old wives' tales. In this case, we can say we have the receipts. Okay, so what is shungite? Technically, this is not a crystal. In fact, it's actually called a mineraloid because it does not have crystalline properties from a chemical structure point of view. It is a stone formation, a rock formation, and geographically speaking, it's concentrated almost exclusively in Russia, and more precisely around a village called Shunga, and that's why it's called shungite. So this rock formation was probably naturally formed about 2 billion years ago, and it is of volcanic origin. So historically, people started to notice, local people started to notice that the water springs present in that area close to these rocks were particularly pure. And more than that, people started to notice that if anybody had a particular health condition, especially skin conditions like psoriasis or eczema, drinking that water would make them better. The skin condition would get much better or disappeared. Also, other health conditions of the liver or hydropsy. So people started to talk about it. Probably this must have started even earlier than what we have historical proof for. We know that definitely from the 18th century, from the time of Tsar Peter the Great, people knew about shungite, at least around that area, at least in Russia, because people started talking about it, and word of mouth reached the ears of the Tsar Peter the Great. Because Peter the Great's health was not particularly good, he decided to test the water for himself. Now, there is a lake on the border with Finland, between Russia and Finland. It's called Onega. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but the point is that the bottom of the lake is pure shungite. So there's a very high concentration of this rock. And the amazing thing is that people could always drink the water straight from the lake without boiling it, without doing anything to it, and it would be good and it would be healthy. And not just healthy, it would also have healing properties. So at this point, Peter the Great was really impressed, to the point where he actually instructed his soldiers to put a piece of shungite in their backpack everywhere they went, and instructed them to use shungite to purify the water. And we still have the written orders that emanated from the Tsar from that period. And not only that, but Peter the Great then decided to set up the very first spa in Russia, and which was dedicated, it was a spa city and a whole complex dedicated to healing the veterans, the soldiers who came back, were going back home from after battle, to heal them. And the water springs around Shungite proved to be very beneficial. So this is the history, and so this is fact. So for sure, this rock must have had some properties, even though they were not conducted any what we would recognize now as scientific experiments, but nonetheless, they did try, and they found that there were some results. We have to wait until the 19th century for shungite to be described in a more scientific way. And of course, it was Russian scientists who started to look into what shungite was and what it could do. Now, chemically speaking, or in terms of molecular structure, shungite is almost pure carbon. It's between 90% and 98% pure carbon. And in fact, the higher the percentage of carbon, the purer the stone. And so the purest shungite, which is found in Russia, is also called noble shungite. You can find shungite formations in other countries like Austria or Czechoslovakia, but the concentration, the percentage of carbon is not as high, and therefore the quality is not as pure as the shungite that you find in Russia. So if you're thinking of purchasing a piece of shungite for yourself, it's not particularly expensive, but you do have to make sure that you know where it's coming from, that it comes with a certificate of authenticity, and you know that it's the real deal. After that, we have to wait until the 20th century, really, to start to get more scientific studies on shungite. And I do believe that we're talking more and more about shungite because of the times we're in, because of the widespread use of mobile phones and computers and 5G. We are more and more aware of the toxicity in our environment, and we are now painfully, I would say, aware of the effects, of the dangers of electromagnetic fields. I remember years ago when the first mobile phones started to come out, and some people started to maybe wonder, are these mobile phones really good for us? Is there any danger for us? And for years, people were laughed at just for asking the question. Whereas now we do know that mobile phones do have some dangerous effects, some negative effects on our health, on our endocrine system, on our hormonal system. And then 5G came, and I have to say, quite a few scientists actually came forward saying, maybe we don't need this. Maybe we should reconsider. It's not the best for us. There were some Congress hearings actually in the United States that I followed, and where scientists brought data and proof that basically validated their concerns, but nobody listened. So now we've got 5G anyway. But at the same time, as a homeopath, and I'm sure maybe a lot of you are suffering from sensitivities from EMF radiations, or you know somebody who suffers from these sensitivities, or if you're a therapist, you probably see more and more people coming to you with not just chemical sensitivities, but also with electromagnetic sensitivities. I have quite a few patients, and in fact, as I will explain, even in my home, I had an experience of this. So it's not just the mobile phones now; it's also the smart meters. I don't know if you have this where you live in the UK. They're trying to push for everybody to have a smart meter that basically counts how much electricity you consume, or how much gas, heating, or whatever it is. And some people can feel the effect even if they don't themselves have a smart meter, which is usually located just outside your house. But they can feel the effect from the smart meters from their neighborhood, from the neighbors, or, because they're incredibly powerful, which is why I don't have a smart meter. But anyway, so this is why I think Shungite is becoming more and more well-known and necessary, I would say. So as I was saying, and I'm going to refer to my notes from time to time because there is quite a lot of information today. It was in the 90s, in 1996, that we found out what Shungite is made of. And in fact, there were two scientists, and you can look them up. The names were Robert Curl and Richard Smalley. They won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 1996 because they discovered this substance called fullerenes, which is a special carbon-based molecular formation, and it's basically the major component of Shungite. And after that, more further studies were conducted on the effects, on the properties of Shungite, and they found that indeed Shungite does seem to have antioxidant properties, and it can improve the immune system functions, and it does definitely protect from electromagnetic fields and the negative impact on human beings. So this is why I say that this makes Shungite, let's say, special compared to other gemstones or other crystals, because I think they have done quite a lot of studies, for example, on crystal quartz, the properties of crystal quartz, but not so much on other stones or on other gemstones. So the molecular structure of Shungite, they found, has such a structure that it seems to kind of trap almost particles like chemicals, chlorine, for example, fluoride, and radioactive particles. So for that reason, it's a kind of filter almost. And it also is antibacterial. It can kill a variety of bacteria or viruses and other pathogens, which explains how people could always drink the water from that lake full of shungite and not fall ill. I mean, you couldn't drink water from any lake in general without feeling ill. I mean, that's not something that that is advisable. So that explains it. So in general, in its natural form, how do we use shungite? Like I said, I put this in my water jug and I use it as drinking water to purify my drinking water. Now, I have to clarify that where I live, the tap water is perfectly fine, at least in theory. I don't like the taste. I don't know what kind of chemicals are added to make it drinkable. I live in a big city, so usually cities are more problematic from this point of view, even though I live in Scotland and the water up here is generally pretty good. But I have to say that there is a difference. When I went to the Isle of Skye last month, I noticed immediately the difference in the taste of the water. The tap water was just beautiful. And it didn't need anything. I didn't have to put any shungite. I just drank it straight from the tap. It was great. It tasted really, really great. At the same time, I have not done any tests or any analysis on the water before and after putting the shungite in it. So I can only give you my subjective opinion that the water from my water jug with the shungite tastes better than the water straight from the tap. So that's all I can say. But still, it doesn't cost me anything to keep this in the water jug, and so I keep doing that. Another way that you can use shungite is wearing it. There are plenty of medallions or bracelets that you can use to protect yourself. You can put big chunks of shungite beside your computer. So there are different ways of using shungite for protection in general, and especially if you are sensitive, and you can just try for yourself. I mean, I always say the best way to understand how remedies work, how crystals work, how gemstones work is by trying, because we're all different. We are all frequency, we're all energy frequencies, and we all vibrate at different frequencies. So if you find a frequency match in a particular gemstone, you will know, because you will feel the effects. So you will feel better, even if you cannot put your finger on it, but you will feel better. So it's a question of trial and error sometimes, really. So like I said, shungite is also very grounding gemstone. So I would use that for that reason as well. And when I say grounding, what I mean is with all the technology that we have and all the frequencies, the EMF that we swim in, it's like a massive soup of frequencies and radiation frequencies. I have the feeling we sometimes get disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from the earth. And when that happens, we don't know how we feel. Literally, we don't know how we feel. We don't feel well, we don't feel good, but we don't know why, and we cannot even tell why. We cannot identify what the problem is. Or we find ourselves scattered mentally, scattered, cannot focus, cannot concentrate on anything. This is a general sense of feeling uncomfortable, not belonging. It's very, very common. I see that all the time, particularly in recent years in patients. They come to me, they know there's something wrong. Perhaps they have symptoms, but they don't know exactly. They cannot. It's not just that they cannot put it into words. They cannot even explain it to themselves. They cannot have, they don't understand what's going on with them. And it makes them feel incredibly uncomfortable or irritable or disconnected. Like I say, that's the best word I can use is disconnection. And it's part of the reason why a lot of therapists, naturopaths, and holistic healers advise people to ground themselves, to walk barefoot on the grass, on the ground, on the earth, or do gardening, touch the soil with their hands, ground yourself, really ground yourself, because it's also a way to discharge all the bad energy, all the radiation back down into the earth. So gemstones can also help us do that, and particularly shungite. So I think this is a good time to have a break, and then when we come back, I will talk about the homeopathic shungite and what it does.
OMTimes TV. In my book, Gifts from the Earth, I illustrate the healing properties of 12 gemstone remedies. You will see real case studies from my practice and dive into the wonderful world of gemstone remedies. This is a clear and practical guide on how to use gemstones in homeopathy. Whether you are an experienced practitioner or beginner, you will find this book a fascinating read. Gifts from the Earth is available on Amazon. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Hi, welcome back. Okay, so now we talk about shungite in homeopathy. So as you know, any substance that you turn into homeopathic remedies has the natural properties, healing properties, amplified many times, many times, and that's the same with shungite. By the way, if you want to read about shungite, you find information and details on my book, Gifts from the Earth, and also in Colin Griffith's book, New Materia Medica, particularly Volume 3, that's where Shungite is also described. So Shungite was first proved as a homeopathic remedy in 2017, which is very, very recent. And as I said before, gemstones and crystals have come really, really late, have been added really late in homeopathy to the materia medica compared to other holistic modalities, which I keep finding astonishing, because crystals, as you know, have been used in healing for their healing properties for thousands of years. And homeopathy is also a very old modality, started 300 years ago almost, but for some reason gemstones were overlooked a little bit, and they're still underused in practice, in clinical practice, in my opinion, which is part of the reason why I'm doing this, just to bring more awareness, because this is a very, very good remedy. And the first thing that this remedy, the first main property that this remedy can be used for is as a detoxing remedy. It's a detoxing and transformative remedy. It has been described as Plutonian. Pluto is the planet of transformation, of death and rebirth in mythology. And so it's profound transformation. It's also transformation as in you have to go down in the bowels of the earth and then come back up to the surface completely transformed and cleansed. So this is what it's meant by Plutonian. It's from that point of view, it's not dissimilar from Moldavite. And if you remember, I had an episode on this podcast about Moldavite. If you want to go and watch it, if you have not watched it yet, I thought it was very interesting. I also had a wonderful guest, an expert on Moldavite. But that's the similarity between Shungite and Moldavite, the transformation and the affinity, the detoxing from negative energy, particularly radioactive energy. And I had a chance to try this remedy just recently in my house, because my husband had to have an MRI scan. Nothing major. It was a routine check. He has some prostate issues, but it was the first time he was going through an MRI. As you probably know, an MRI takes quite a long time. I would say it's 20 minutes in this box where they blast you with radiation. Okay, it was necessary. I'm not begrudging the procedure, and but I know that my husband is quite sensitive. He's a very healthy individual, a very healthy man, and he does not take any medication. Part of the reason why he does not take any medication is because he's incredibly sensitive to chemicals, so any pharmaceuticals, but also things like spray, like deodorants, anything that is aerosolized causes him to sneeze and cough, and he gets his chest tightened and so on. So while he's very, very healthy in general, is also very sensitive. So I did suggest before he went for the procedure, would you like me to give you some remedy just to protect you, to prevent anything from the MRI scan? And of course, being a man, typical man, he said, no, I'm fine. I don't need anything. I'll be okay. So everything went well. He went and came back very quickly. That night, he was sweating so much that I woke up purely from the sensation. The bed sheets were soaked in sweat, and he had to wake up. He had to get changed, so it was not a good night. I found it very, very hard to sleep, and so did he. The following morning, I asked him how he felt, and he said, literally, and I quote, "I feel like I'm radiating heat from within." So, of course, I tried to touch him to see if there was no fever. He was actually quite cool to the touch. He said that he felt really strange, and the heat was coming from within. It was not fever. It was not flu. He was not sweating anymore, but he had this sensation. So I thought, okay, so that was probably the radiation from the MRI that affected you. And so I have Shungite remedy in my house, and that's what I gave him. I gave him 3 doses over the course of the morning, and he was fine. The sensation disappeared after the second dose. I also gave him Moldavite, and I gave him Moldavite in quite a high potency, 1M, because I think that these 2 remedies go well together. And so that was another reason why I thought, well, I have to talk about Shungite this time, because it was just coming at me from all angles. So this is an example on how you can use Shungite, because it definitely will purge your system from radiation. So that's the main detoxing property of Shungite. Now, in homeopathy, there are a lot of remedies that can be used to detox. Detox from heavy metal, from parasites, from fungal infections. One of the most common ones and the most commonly used is silica, which is silicon dioxide. Very, very, very useful remedy. However, Shungite is definitely specific for EMF side effects. I would definitely think of that. It does have a detoxing property, like we saw with the studies that prove that Shungite can have antioxidant property, anti-parasite, anti-pathogens in general. I have used this remedy in my practice a lot on children, particularly children on the autistic spectrum, for various reasons. But many times I find that we know that all kids now are addicted to gadgets, to phones, iPads, tablets, and things like that. I find that children on the spectrum are more easily addicted to electronics, and also they are more easily affected and more sensitive to electronics. Parents do report that whenever they allow their children to spend more time on the tablet, more time than usual, the behavior deteriorates. There is more anger, there is more irritability, there is more frustration, even less focus than usual. Children with ADHD, they get more hyper. It's like they cannot relax, and it takes longer for them to relax, and to relax so much that they can fall asleep, for example, before bed, which is why I always recommend to stop all the electronics at least a couple of hours before bedtime, because it's like the brain gets revved up and it takes longer to slow down, calm down, and relax. So for that reason, I use Shungite for that. I also use Shungite to detox from side effects from medication, antibiotics. That's also a very useful remedy for that. But it's also a very good remedy to use to take away heavy metals. Again, it's not the only remedy in homeopathy, but depending on the symptoms, when we have particular chemicals involved, and you can do tests. Typically, the patients I see, especially if they're children on the spectrum, they have already done lab tests to see if there's any heavy metals involved or any chemicals involved. So if fluoride, for example, is an issue, there's high levels of fluoride, and you have symptoms like confusion of mind, sleeping problem, difficulty orientating yourself, think about shungite, high levels of aluminium in the system, which is a neurotoxin. So you have weakness, both physical and mental. You have almost like paralysis, stiffening, rigidity. Now, interestingly enough, these are also symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, and Alzheimer's also has been linked with high levels of aluminum in the brain. So this is another way that where shungite can help. It also has a very beneficial effect on the liver and the GI system in general. So the liver is our big filter. Very often, when the liver is overburdened, when there's too much toxicity, the liver cannot cope. It has too much work, too much to do. And so the toxins just stay there. And then they can cause all sorts of chaos, all sorts of symptoms, depending on the individual's genetic makeup. For example, some people have an inherently issue with the toxin to begin with because of specific genetic mutations that they have. And so all the toxins that we're all subjected to, that we're all bombarded with, by and large, we can cope. But some people have more difficulties because that's the way they're wired, and their liver is not able to cope with all these toxins. So that's when you need a little bit of help. So things like candida, for example, which is yeast overgrowth. So you have weakness, you have fatigue, you have kind of brain fog, but also digestion issues like constipation or diarrhea, poor immunity defenses. So you catch any bug that's going, or you have chronic skin conditions. So all these can be also helped with shungite. Now, would I choose shungite as first remedy when I take a case with these kind of symptoms? Probably not. And the reason for that is that, like I said, I mean, this remedy was only tested in 2017. So when you think about it, it's only been 6 years. It's not been used so extensively as other remedies that have been tried and tested for years and years and years, if not centuries. And so you always start with what you have, tested. But when you find that you have already tried the remedy that you would usually prescribe for those kind of symptoms and nothing happens, it may be that there are hidden or deeper issues. There's a deeper toxicity. And this is where shungite is really good, because shungite is really deep. It goes down to find the hidden toxicity, the parasites that are not showing up on tests, perhaps. and that are not responding to other treatments. So this is one of those remedies that I would use for that reason. Another reason to use this remedy is, like I mentioned before, this is a Plutonian remedy. It's about transformation. It's about grounding. So, like I said, this remedy brings up to the surface the hidden issues, the hidden toxicity. Now, that can be physical toxicity, parasites, fungal infection, and so on. But it can also be emotional toxicity, all the things, all the trauma, all the bad memories, all the things that have not been processed, that have not been digested, and that create physical issues too. So very close with moldavite. So moldavite also can do that. It can bring up all this hidden trauma. When you have, talking as a homeopath now, when sometimes I have patients who have physical symptoms, they come to me because of physical symptoms, particularly digestive symptoms, and food intolerances, and nothing works. They have already tried the whole thing. They have been to the naturopath. They have done the diets. They have done the tests, the elimination diet, and all the rest of it. Nothing works. And they seem very well put together. They're successful. They have an organized life. There's nothing. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong from the emotional point of view. I always ask the question about stress, about maybe past stress or anything stressful that might have started the whole cause, the whole list of symptoms, and this is when they either close up a little bit, they clump up, or they minimize while talking about issues or past trauma, and so they will mention, divorce, yes, death in the family, yes, all sorts of stuff, but in a light manner. And you get the impression that they don't want to go there, which is understandable. Nobody wants to, bring up or trigger uncomfortable or painful memories. However, in terms of healing is a process, and it's not always a comfortable process. And I always mention that because it's important to remind ourselves that it's not all, you take this beautiful remedy and you'll be fine and everything will be beautiful and flowers and sprinkles. You will have to go through some stuff, particularly if you brushed trauma and difficult experiences under the carpet, because you have to carry on, because you have to, that you're busy, you have to keep going with your life and you have to manage, right? It's totally understandable. However, that kind of energy, that kind of toxic energy has to go somewhere. And if you don't process it, if you don't deal with it, somehow it will stay there, it will fester, and it will find a channel, and it will be your weakest point in your body. So usually that's the digestive system. It will be the liver, it will be the food, it will be acid reflux, GERD, all that kind of stuff. So this is when Shungite, something like Shungite, can be helpful. I would take Shungite or give Shungite, prescribe Shungite alongside other remedies for support, because like I said, there's with the toxicity coming up, you also need some support to be able to deal with it, to process it. But definitely I would I would use this remedy as well. So this remedy, like I said in the beginning, also balances all the chakras, and it is really, really grounding. So I was given the example earlier on of somebody who is not in touch with themselves. So this also helps enormously with that. There is a lot more to say about this amazing remedy. Like I said, you can find information on my book, in my book, Gifts from the Earth. You can also go on my website, which is homeopathyheal.co.uk, and on the page Gemstone Remedies, there are some resources that you can have a look at. There are courses on how to take or prescribe gemstone remedies. And I think this is everything for tonight. So you have a great weekend, and I will see you next time.
This show is not intended to diagnose, prevent, or treat any diseases or illnesses. The information presented within cannot substitute the advice of your physician or other trained healthcare professionals. The content of this show is for educational purposes only and is the expressed opinion of the show host and guests.